Did you know that the latest Ban DJI bill that's floating around through Congress right now could ban all Chinese drones, not just DJI drones? And yes, this new proposed bill would affect you even if you are recreational only, and even if you're not flying a DJI drone. Potensic, Holy Stone, Ruko, Exo, Fimi, Beta FPV, Audiio, DJI. Okay, so you get the idea. So let's get on with it, shall we? A bit of housekeeping before I explain this. I quickly put out a community post last week, but in my haste to notify you what was going on, I did not include a lot of details, so it probably did make it hard to connect the dots in a couple of paragraphs. So I deleted the post and decided to do a quick video on it instead, hence this video. So if you saw that and it went away, that's why. So specifically, there's two parts to this bill that's going on. There's the original bill named the Countering CCP Drones Act, which is making its way through Congress right now as we speak, which would effectively ban the use of DJI drones in the US moving forward. Now this is targeted at DJI. This is the first step addressing security concerns regarding users' data being transmitted to the CCP. To DJI's credit, they recently announced that they are changing the way the flight logs work, so it will not automatically send them, but will require users to opt in. My opinion is this is too little and too late by DJI. Not doing this immediately when the bill was conceived was an arrogant response from DJI, which will likely cost them significant market share. This original act is being voted on as part of another bill by Congress like today, and though it has not officially passed yet, it is likely to pass as it's included as part of a much larger bill. So it's important to act on this bill too, because even if it passes the House, we can still affect the outcome by reaching out to the Senate. Now, more about how to do this in a bit. The anti-China sentiment has bubbled to a boil and has now spawned another version from Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, who introduced this new act, which is called the Drones for First Responders Act, or DFR for short. And if you take a moment to digest the name of the bill, Drones for First Responders Act, and then read the entire text and the intent of the bill, it appears to me that the name itself is deceitful or at best clickbait. If I did a video with a title like this on YouTube and the content was so clearly opposite of the title, YouTube would probably spank me and penalize the channel in some way. But I guess in government, you just get appointed to a new committee instead, or get put on a short list for vice president during an election year. But I digress. The press release states, quote, "This will increase the competitiveness of U.S. drone manufacturers and enhance U.S. national security. I am proud to introduce the Drones for First Responders Act to stop the CCP's influence over our nation and increase the competitiveness of U.S. drone manufacturers by establishing a revenue-neutral grant program to help Americans purchase drones securely made by the U.S. and our allies," said Stefanik. With this legislation, American drone manufacturers will be able to compete with communist China-controlled drones and enhance U.S. national security, she added. On the surface, that doesn't sound bad at all. And considering the US-based Audiio pulled out of the consumer drone market because it simply couldn't compete with DJI on the lower-cost consumer-level drones, it makes sense. Trying to help US manufacturers innovate is a good idea, and I could get behind that if they were to simply do that. Invest in the U.S. manufacturing base with the 25% tariff funds that are already being collected on DJI drones imports, and use these funds to incubate innovation in the U.S.-based drone market, and I'm all for that. Then let competition make the technology better and the prices get lower for the consumer. Perfect. But what does this new act really do for us, the consumer, then? Well, what it really does is to remove the ability for the drone consumer to buy low-cost drones by making them, well, not so low cost anymore. They will do this by adding another tariff or more taxes on drones imported from China. And at first brush, you might say, well, that's not so bad, but here's the details. This proposes to raise taxes in the form of tariffs on all drones from China by 30% the first year, then adds 5% each year up to 50% at year 4, plus $100. And keep in mind, this is targeted at you, the recreation or Part 107 pilot, and applies to all drones from China, not just DJI. Audiio, Ruko, Potensic, Fimi, Exo, yep. Flying a scale model RC plane, helicopter, yep. These are included too. And here's how they're doing this. So let's say you buy a drone today, and it's a Potensic Atom, for instance. It's a great little low-cost drone, and today it costs $279 for this drone. Adding this up, in 4 years, it would cost $518 for that same drone, so nearly double. A DJI Mini 4 Pro Fly More combo, for instance, that now is $1,099, would be $1,748 for the same drone. And some might say, well, that's the price you got to pay if you want to play, right? Well, remember I mentioned the 4-year timeline, and the kicker comes in at year 5, where this bill bans drones from import. Yes, I said bans imports from China altogether. And the way they're going to do this is not by targeting DJI directly, because DJI has reached out to try to make different manufacturing with Specta and some other companies already. So what they're going to do is ban parts of the drone from import that are coming from China, such as the flight controller, radio data transmission device, camera, gimbal, software, or data storage made in China. So this will pretty much ban every consumer drone we have today in the US in favor of a US-based manufacturer, which of right now, there are none that are interested. Something interesting as well that came up in the comments the brief time I had the community post up is that FPV builders will be laughing as they continue to build their own. Well, not so fast. Earlier I mentioned the parts made in China were banned in 5 years. This includes many of the parts like the ESC or the flight controller, the camera, the remote, that will be banned from import if it's made in China. This means that many of the FPV drones now built here will not have any parts and will be out of luck. Another interesting aspect of this is the way the bill is being promoted. Remember, it's called the Drones for First Responders Act. And where do the first responders come in? And what it proposes is that the tariffs you pay in the next 4 years would go to the first responders so they can purchase new drones. Specifically, 60% of the income would go to first responders, 20% would go to farmers, and 20% would go to those working in critical infrastructure. After 5 years, the funds would end, now leaving the first responders and others mentioned with a higher priced drone market, and that is assuming US manufacturers will start making drones without using any Chinese components, which is a tough haul. So it takes money from you and I, the consumers, gives it to others to subsidize their drone purchases for the next 4 years so they don't have to pay more, like we are, while destroying the existing drone market in the meantime. After the subsidies are done, the consumer market will likely be in chaos and the commercial market may or may not have any drones to purchase at all. And if they do, will likely be very expensive as there will be no foreign competition. Now, is it possible that in the next 4 years we could see the US manufacturers step in the market and start manufacturing all the components necessary to make consumer drones, then start selling quality drones at a price that we've become used to? I wish that would be true, but it seems like a tough haul. The players like Audiio and Sony have already tried and have failed at that. Over the last 6 years that I've had the privilege of having this channel on YouTube, I've heard from a lot of you in email, comments, and in person how drones affect your life. From those sharing flight with their kids for the first time, the disabled veteran who experiences the freedom of flight through the drone camera, the teacher who sees their students' eyes light up when the propellers spin and they see liftoff for the first time, I sincerely thank you for sharing a bit of your life with me. I guess that's part of my story now, being able to share a small part of joy drones and flight bring to so many of you. So what can we do? We need to share our stories with our congressmen and senators and tell them how something like this act becoming reality would personally affect us. And I know I have a hard time sitting down, drafting a letter, finding all the government officials in my area, and sending my objections along. It's a pain. The quickest and easiest way I've found to do this is to go to the Drone Advocacy Alliance webpage. The Drone Advocacy Alliance is a nonpartisan, drone-centric grassroots advocacy coalition that works with industry stakeholders. In short, they're out there fighting for the drone industry on your behalf. And no, I have no affiliation with them other than I share the passion for the drone industry. And why I mention them is they set up a simple form on a webpage where you can fill in your personal thoughts, why this bill negatively affects you, and they will automatically send your letter to the correct congressmen and senators on your behalf. So take a moment and jot down some of your stories that you shared with me. Hopefully we can persuade enough of our officials to take another look at this before it changes the drone landscape forever. Now, you'll want to do this for both bills, the Countering the CCP Act, which is the DJI Specific Act, and the Drones for First Responders Act. Of course, I'll leave links in the description that should take you right to each one of those sections. I expect this type of pressure will continue, and I'll do my very best to keep you informed as this evolves. So if you want to be kept up to date, make sure you subscribe, and if this video was of any value to you, consider tapping that like. I really appreciate it. With that, thank you for sharing your time with me on the channel. And until next time, live long and prosper.